What are the most brutal pills to swallow in life? I was 8 when my little brother Jamie was born. I remember the day clearly. Mom came home from the hospital with this perfect little bundle, and Dad was grinning like he just won the lottery. And me? I felt like I'd been erased. Overnight, I went from the kid to the one who's supposed to stay out of the way. At first, it was little things. Mom would feed Jamie first, then glance at me with a kind of exhausted pity. "You'll get your dinner later," she'd say. And I did. Cold cereal, or sometimes nothing at all. Dad started asking me to be helpful around the house, which really meant I was the unpaid assistant to 2 adults obsessed with a baby. I washed bottles, scrubbed floors, and learned to disappear into the background. By the time I was 9, the favoritism was obvious. Jamie could do no wrong. He was cute, he was funny, he was the baby who cried and instantly got a cuddle in a bottle. I, on the other hand, had to sneak affection like it was a crime. If I got too loud, too excited, or even asked for something normal, like a bedtime story, they'd sigh. "Not now, we have Jamie," they'd say, like I was some kind of inconvenience. The worst part wasn't even the neglect, it was the cruelty. Mom would compare me to Jamie constantly. "Why can't you be more like your brother?" she'd snap when I spilled milk or forgot to make my bed. Dad, who used to cheer me on at soccer, now barely looked at me. I'd score goals and hear nothing, but if Jamie batted a ball into the neighbor's yard, Dad would laugh and pat his head, calling him Little Champ. School became my escape. Teachers noticed the sadness in my eyes. I'd walk through the hallways like a ghost, trying to disappear, trying not to attract attention at home. But at home, it was like I didn't exist. Sometimes I'd overhear them whispering. "We'll deal with him later," they'd say. "He'll understand eventually." Understand what? That I wasn't worth the same love? That I was a shadow? When I was 10, things got worse. Jamie started daycare, and Mom used that as a reason to dump all the responsibility on me. I was in charge of cleaning, feeding him, watching him nap, everything. I remember one night he cried and wouldn't sleep. I begged Mom to help. She looked at me like I was ridiculous. "I just got home from work," she said. "You handle it." That night I held him while he screamed, rocking him back and forth until my arms ached, until my eyes burned with exhaustion. I remember sitting on the floor, Jamie finally asleep in my arms, and I thought, this is my life now, invisible, forgotten. By the time I hit 12, the psychological games were brutal. Mom would laugh at my mistakes, but gush over Jamie for doing the exact same things. I started sneaking snacks, hiding in my room, avoiding their gaze. Dad would make jokes about me being lazy, clumsy, or weird, jokes I knew were meant to wound. And every time I tried to talk about my feelings, they'd tell me I was being dramatic. High school didn't get better. My parents continued their obsession with Jamie, who was now thriving socially and academically. They'd post endless photos of him on social media while mine were always later or forgotten. Birthday parties were always for Jamie. I became a ghost in my own family. I started acting out, hoping someone, anyone, would notice. Teachers did, friends did, but Mom and Dad, they still didn't. I didn't understand then that what I was experiencing was a kind of parental narcissism. I just knew I hurt, and I hated that I felt invisible in the very home that was supposed to protect me. I kept journals, scribbling everything down. The nights I cried myself to sleep are countless. I would lie awake listening to Jamie giggle and coo, wondering why I wasn't enough. It wasn't until I left for college that I realized I could exist outside of their narrative. I still feel anger, still feel the ache of abandonment, but I've learned something. Being forgotten by the people who are supposed to love you doesn't mean you don't matter. I've built friendships, relationships, and a life where I am seen, where I am enough.